Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 2.11, and in this lesson, we're going to take a look at DJing inside of the software realm, or I guess I should say traditional DJing inside of the software realm. So in the last video, we took a look at a really simple hardware setup, and I had those two really cheap cdjs and that mixer in between. But at the same time, I was still able to mix between two tracks seamlessly, and I could still kind of tell a story. I can keep everything in time and hopefully keep everybody on the dance floor if that's what my job is in that particular situation. We're now going to transition and take a look at Native Instruments Traktor. So Native Instruments is another German company like Bitwig, and they make some incredible stuff. Traktor being probably my favorite program that these guys make for a number of reasons, but really Traktor is as powerful or as simple a program as you want it to be. They've even released versions for iPhone and iPad. I don't really know how you could DJ very well on an iPhone, but apparently you can. So that's now available. This is the website here. You guys can check it out in more depth if you want. There's plenty of good stuff. The one thing I wanted to say is that they do kind of market it so that you would try to buy one of their MIDI controllers with the software, and a lot of times the software is bundled with it. So I think even if you were to get something like the Control X1, which is just $199, you would also get the program itself. The one little piece I might recommend if you're just getting started would be this Control Z1, and it's literally very similar to the mixer that we had in the last video. You can see there's like these three knobs up here. I'm guessing those are going to be for EQs. We have our faders here to control our volumes, and we have a crossfader at the bottom. And again, only $199, but remember, if you're working out of your computer, this is only acting as a controller. There's no internal circuitry going on that's actually changing anything. You're only controlling a knob on the software, so you're still going to need preferably a 4 output or a 2-channel output audio interface so that you could hook up one set of outputs to speakers and another set of outputs to your headphones, or at least have the capability like we have with our Duet to do that routing so that if we need to cue anything up, we can put it in our headphones, not play that out to everybody while we're trying to make something that sounds cohesive and that sounds nice. So I'm just going to show you guys the program. And before we jump into Traktor just a little bit, I did want to explain sort of the situations where you're going to want to use hardware. So you might want to use your cdjs and a mixer if you have them. Situations where you might want to use Traktor, and then situations where you're going to want to use Bitwig. Now remember, Bitwig really is capable of everything that Traktor is capable of and everything that the hardware system is capable of, only we're going to have to do some extra work and the interface isn't going to look similar. This should look very similar if you imagine this as being CDJ number 1 and this being CDJ number 2, and I can make it even easier for us by getting rid of these extra features, but you really need to know how to use those extra features if you're going to use this program. So when would you use hardware? And this is just my opinion. You don't have to go with it. There are no rules to this, but for me personally, let's say your friend calls you up and they say, hey, my friend, so a second friend, is having a house party. We'd really love if somebody could come and DJ it. I know you can kind of DJ. Would you be willing to come down and do that? And, your initial reaction is probably always going to be no, but, I'm a bit of a hermit and I don't have a whole lot of friends. So I figure maybe I should go and play this. I can make some new friends and, hopefully help these people have a good time, or whatever your reasoning is. Doesn't matter. But you catch wind that there's a lot of people there you don't know. And so you may not trust every single person who's there. And whenever you're in a situation where you don't feel 100% comfortable bringing in your gear, bringing in a $2,000 laptop that has thousands of dollars worth of software on it, and also maybe your own project files and stuff you've been working on for a long time, don't take your computer because you're asking for trouble. So I have that very simple like $200, $300 setup. I've got some USB sticks that have a variety of different genres on them. So whatever people are feeling like, I should be able to put together something. And a lot of times people just feel like a party's better if there's somebody playing music live. They don't even necessarily care what that music is. So in that case, I'd probably bring the hardware setup. I don't want somebody accidentally spilling a drink on my computer, or heaven forbid, somebody stealing my computer. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it definitely does happen, and you just need to be careful. Now, if somebody steals one of those cdjs, I'm like, haha, joke's on you. Those things suck. You're not going to have any idea what you're doing with it. And I could easily replace that. It's not that expensive, and it's not something I hold very near and dear to my heart like I do my computer. So if that's the case for using hardware, when would I want to use Traktor? And when would I want to use Traktor instead of using Bitwig? Very easy, and for me it's actually most of the time. So if you can afford the $99 and you're interested in DJing, even in just a very consumerish, just for fun kind of way, I would recommend that you pick up Traktor Pro, because it's going to make your life DJing a little bit easier than what you have in Bitwig. And the reason I say that is because once you bring in tracks and you beat grid your tracks, which is very similar to stretching, and I'll show you guys that in a couple minutes, you can pretty much drop anything in here and you're ready to go. And it's already going to be beat grid for you. You can even sync the BPM automatically. There's lots of just really nice features in here that mean you can have more time to do other things, not just focused on beat gridding and queuing up your tracks and beat matching. So if I had a friend and it's just me and my friends and maybe a few other people, everybody that I kind of trust, it's going to be very chill. I know for sure it's not going to get out of control. I would definitely probably use my laptop and use Traktor, because I can still play whatever genre people are interested in, and I can even easily, if somebody wants a particular song, I could grab that song pretty quick, beat grid it, and I could drop it in, literally within 2 songs if I'm smart about how I'm going about my arrangement. And for the most part, people don't care if you have a super flawless set. They just want to hear songs that they like to listen to or like to groove out to. And most of my friends aren't like super big into audio production. In fact, like none of my friends are really into audio production and making music. So they're not going to want me going crazy experimental on the decks anyway. They're going to want something pretty traditional, and you can't hold that against anybody. So that's why we would use Traktor. So when would we use Bitwig? We could use Bitwig as a substitute for Traktor. The only difference is you have to do a lot of prep work before you can just jump in and start doing a set. I wouldn't recommend that you make a Bitwig set that has all of your thousands and thousands of tracks in it. You're just going to end up crashing your computer more often than not. So you have to have an idea of what you want to play and when you want to play it if you're working inside of Bitwig Studio. Not always the case, but it will make your life easier and give you more time to manipulate things. When I would use Bitwig is if I was doing like my own performance and working a lot with my own sounds, and if I wanted to get a little more experimental, do some interesting audio effects, if people are specifically coming to see me perform, then I would definitely use Bitwig, because I know that the audience is interested in what I'm doing. Whereas in Traktor, most of the time, the people are more interested in the sound coming out and not so much what you're doing with your controller or behind the computer on the keyboard. So that's kind of my own opinion and sort of the hierarchy of when to use a certain program. But, that's obviously open to interpretation, and you can use whatever you want whenever you want. Just thought I would throw out a little bit of advice there, just my own opinion again. So I did see, and don't hold it against me, I watched a couple of sets from Ultra Music Festival to see if anybody's using Traktor. And for a long time, they really only want people DJing on the decks. And I think that's because it's just a certain look and it's a certain aesthetic to see somebody up there with the Pioneer mixer and the Pioneer cdjs doing their thing, right? That's just kind of how it's been for a long time. However, the second set I clicked on was actually Zed's set, and he was using Traktor. So I guess it is starting to break through a little bit more, and you're going to notice that, if you're working with like EDM music, especially like rise, drop, rise, drop, rise, drop, rise, drop, rise, drop over and over again, then Traktor and cdjs, like you can do it just as easily in either program. And a lot of times people working on cdjs, they've prepped their tracks in something like Bitwig or in Ableton Live. So they've kind of already made some changes and adjustments to make life easier for them. Just thought I'd let you guys know that a lot of times if you watch those sets, there's been some pre-work already done. So don't feel ashamed if you're wondering, like, why can I not quite get these builds and these drops to work like some of the people I like? And don't worry about it. We can actually kind of set that up inside of Bitwig, and then we could actually print that to CD or put it to USB stick and then stick it into our CDJ, and we can really do the same thing. And we can do the same thing in Traktor very, very easily. So if you remember from a few videos ago, we talked about stretching a track, and it was all about finding that first beat, lining it up with the grid so that when we played back, we'd be on the grid all the way through. Traktor has a little bit more of a sophisticated system for doing that, and it's really designed to do that. And so that's the first thing we're going to look at inside this program. When you open up Traktor, this is what you're probably going to see. You can, of course, open up the system preferences here. And really, before you do anything in this program, I encourage you to kind of look through this and get your settings so you have something similar to what I have. It should come up like this. You can actually add multiple decks. So if you don't just want 2 decks, you could actually have 4 decks going down here. But for us and for our purposes, starting with 2 is probably the way to go, to be 100% honest. Also, make sure you have your audio set up properly. So if you're using a external audio interface, have that all good to go. And then you might have to do some routings, and we're going to do a little bit of this later. So you'll see everything that I'm doing as I go through it. If you have any additional questions, you can feel free to leave those in the comments, but this is not a course about how to use Traktor. I wouldn't mind doing that way in the future, but for right now, really, we're just focusing on the basics of DJing. So to bring in a track, we have our browser view. If we're in Mixer view, we actually have access to the browser. But if I go specifically to the browser, here it is. It's so easy. You can find tracks in here. There's even one for your iTunes folder. I don't have anything in iTunes, so that's not going to help me. But you could obviously have something to your desktop, and you could quickly navigate to that. And from there, all you have to do is pull tracks into these little crates. So imagine that you were a DJ and you were working on vinyl. You imagine having tons of crates full of tracks. Really, you can do the same thing in here. So I've already pulled some tracks in here. And if you want, you can even go directly from your desktop and drag and drop it inside of here, and the track will show up. By default, it's probably not going to have the BPM listed. A lot of these tracks I've already worked with inside of Traktor before, and so it saves all the information. Another great reason to want to use this program. But let's go through and do one together. So here's a track that hasn't been beat gridded. Hopefully it's an easy one to use. I don't even know what this is, to be honest. I'm just going to drag it and drop it into Deck A. Go back to our Mixer view, and it's analyzed this track as 128 BPM, and by default, it's been set to auto beat map this song. You can see that there's this one flag right here, and it's tried to find where it thinks the first beat in the track is. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this back, and let's see what we've got. Okay, I'm going to go through and do this my own way. I don't really want to have their beat grid on there for me. So I'm going to go and open up this advanced panel right here, go down to grid, okay? Or actually, I'm going to go to Q first. I'll click 1. This is where it's put in its first beat marker, and I'm just going to trash it. Now I can go to grid, and I'm actually going to set my first beat marker at the first kick drum that I find. And let me also tell you guys that with your preferences real quick, I'm working through the monitor right now and not the master. And when you are working through the monitor, you'll have access to turning on a click track. And so we can make sure that we're right on. So actually, if I turn this off and click play, I don't think we're going to hear anything. So when we're in monitor mode, we need to make sure we turn this on. And obviously in a live situation, you can have one set to monitor, one set to master, and that's really the best of both worlds. But for our purposes right now, I'm just working in monitor. So let's play back, and I can even turn on the click. So that to me sounds like it's the 1. I just put my headphones on, so if my voice is changing at all, that's because I can't really hear myself talk. So this is our 1. I'm gonna zoom in, and you can see we're pretty much right aligned already. I'm just going to use this to scrub, just clicking and dragging. And I'm going to set a beat marker by clicking this button here. And you can notice that it's set it to 127.999. My guess is it's 128. I can just nudge this over and get it to 128, which I'm going to do, and then I'm not going to touch those anymore. These 2 top buttons will move my beat grid around. So it's not only moving this 1, it's actually set a beat grid at multiple points. And so as I move it, it's actually going to be moving all of them. If you can kind of see that, you can see these lighter lines here. So let's go back and try to get this on beat. I'm going to put it out of beat first so we can hear it. And now I'm going to try to pull it back and get it on beat. And I always love setting loops just to make sure that our beat grid is pretty good. If I want to get really fancy, I can go back, look at our marker, and see how it lines up. It looks pretty close. Maybe I'll move it over 1, but it doesn't have to be dead on. It's going to be a feel thing, because I know sometimes I feel a beat differently than other people, even where the 1 is hitting. And so every kick drum or every single beat indicator might be a little bit different. So if you're not lined up dead on, you don't have to worry about it, but it will help you to be as close as possible. So if I play and I click through, I can make sure that we're on beat the whole way through and make sure that our tempo isn't changing. All right, so that sounds good to me. The other thing you can do here really quick is you can set cue markers and you can map them, so you can easily have different points in the song you want to play back from. And we have this great visual interface here on the bottom that's showing us where changes in the song are occurring. So we can see, like we've talked about with those amplitude changes before, we can see that right here there's a breakdown coming up. Which is super helpful, just in a number of ways. But I'm going to, first of all, I turned off the ticks, so we don't have that anymore. If I click the lock button, I can lock this in, so now I can adjust my beat grid and I won't make any mistakes. So I'm gonna go to cue. I'm probably gonna want a cue marker at the very beginning of the track. So all I have to do is just click the 2 button and it's gonna cue it. I would mention that turning on your snap and your quantize will quantize these to the closest beat marker. So for example, if I'm here, I can still click the 2 and it will put it back. If these were off, it would actually set my 2 right there. But this is actually my first cue marker, so I'd prefer to have that first and not second. So to do that, I'm gonna click 1, map. I'll map it over to 3, 2, map it back to 1, 3, map it back to 2. Be careful that you don't delete this 2. This is specifically your beat grid marker, and if you do that, it's gonna put the whole track out of and off of the grid again. So just be careful, because to delete something, I would just click 1 and delete, and it would delete it. But it doesn't ask you specifically with the beat grids, so just be careful of that. So now we can play back. And we can maybe set a couple more. Another handy feature which you can set in the preferences is to have your BPM counter down here, and you can set that based on chunks. So I've set it in 16s. So you can actually see that when we start, it's using this as this 2 indicator as our 1, because that's where we set the beat grid. If I go back and play from the beginning, we have exactly, it looks like 8 bars before we hit the 2, or in this case, the 1, 1, 1. So just watch this here and we can count the track together like we did before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. I got off. Let's just start from the kick drum so I can actually do it properly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, etc., etc., etc. And you can see it actually will count that for me, so I don't even have to do that anymore if I don't want to. Having a click track makes it easier, and I'm also doing the old one headphone on the ear trick, which makes it a little bit difficult. But let's go through and just set a couple more cue points just so I can show you. I'll set one at the breakdown. That sounds like a good place. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're gonna see that a lot of times you're setting cue points when you're at like the 6, 1, 1, when you're at these changes. And again, this is all based on our arrangement, and this is why analyzing song form is so handy when it comes to DJing, and why I think you have to do it first. So let's just set one more. I think it's gonna come right on the 1. Yeah, we'll come right on the 1. All right, cool. So that's basically a way you can prep a track. You can also do things with loops as well. You can make cue points that are actually loop points. We're not going to go into any of that right now. I'm trying to do a basics here inside of Traktor and really just show you how this works as a traditional DJ setup. So let's go ahead and transition into making like your first sort of mix between two tracks. This is going to be a very rough way of doing it. I haven't prepped this at all, but let's go through it step by step here for you. We're only going to be using our 2 decks and our mixer, much like what we saw on the hardware. This is our crossfader, and right now it's set between decks A and decks B. Got to make sure I turn that on. And we have our 2 just regular volume sliders. I'm going to go ahead and change my preferences, and now just set my master to be 1 and 2, which is now going to let me control these faders and stuff, and I'll be able to hear a difference. Don't worry too much about that right now. So let's look down here and let's see. I have a couple of tracks that are relatively close in BPM. These 2 are actually exactly the same, but let's not use those for right now. Let's see. Here's something at 105, and here's something at 100. That will work quite well. So let's pull this track into deck A. Again, all I have to do is drag and drop. For some reason I've set, I wonder if that's right. Let's see. Okay, cool. That will work perfectly for us. Now, if I turn off the snap and the quantize buttons at the top here, and I play back, I can just jump and move around at any point, and I can also set loops anywhere. So it might be really crappy loops, and I'm just going to click play here, and let's just randomly set a loop. So that doesn't sound too good. Let's turn snap and quantize back on. And now there's always that big debate that comes up as to whether or not working in Traktor means you're not a real DJ because you're not actually beat matching. Personally, I think that's just kind of sour grapes. If the technology allows for you to have a snap and a quantize function, you should use it because it gives you more time to do other things. So I know personally I would never be able to work quick enough if I was working with like 4 cdjs and I had to beat match everything and be focusing on that in addition to levels and to EQs and to effects. But inside of Traktor, because I have this and I have the safety of knowing I don't have to hit right on the one, it gives me so much more time to do other things. So if you are working in Traktor, turn the snap, turn the quantize on. It's not cheating, especially if you already know how to beat match. It's not cheating at all. And I'll show you how to beat match without using these in just a second, but it's even going to be tricky for me to get it perfect because of the fact that like clicking play right on the one is never really possible, but we're going to try our best to do it. So we have that at 100. This is at 105. So by default, what would end up happening is you'd probably be listening to this second deck inside your headphones. But for right now, we'll listen to all this at the same time. Let's play this through, and obviously I already have a 1 set. But we'll go back to the beginning. I'm going to play this track. And now I'm just playing here to be like, okay, where's the 1 in this track? Maybe I can find a drum. That will probably be a better 1 for me. So I gotta put my headphones on again. I'm just gonna try to click play on the 1 of this track here. All right, that sounded good for all of about 1 second, and then it immediately went off. And you have to pretend like you can't see these numbers up here, which obviously you can. But if I was working on a CDJ or something, I would have to be listening closely and understand that this track is playing faster, which is pretty easy to tell. Now, to my ear, also because I know these tracks really well and I know their original versions, I have a feeling that this track is going a little bit quicker. So I have to try to slow this track down and match the tempo of this other track. And I can try to do it in real time. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And you can see we can kind of do it just like that very easily. And this is really kind of the process you would take if you were beat matching with 2 CDJs. You'd have your 1 track playing back, your other track playing in your headphones, and you would try to manually use your tempo fader, your playback fader, or I guess it's called a pitch fader, to try and match those BPMs going. Inside of Traktor, we actually have something that locks the pitch. So we're going to keep our original pitch of our track. It's much like the stretch HD algorithm inside of Bitwig. So if I flip that on, it's going to maintain the original pitch of the track. So another sort of thing, I just always have it on unless I'm going for an effect and I'm going like really crazy one side or another. So if this is like 120, I may not turn on the pitch sync here. I might just let the other track, play back much, much lower, for example. But inside of Traktor, there is a very handy feature, which is the sync feature. So by default, the first track you play back is going to become your master track. But if I want to sync to this tempo, which is, you can see right here, 100, all I'm going to do is go to my other track, hit the sync button, locks it in there. I can't move it right now because this is our master. And now if I want to play back in time, it should be pretty easy for me. We just have to wait for the 1. Okay, so we want to hit it at the same sort of transition. I'm going to do it when we get to this cue marker. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, in that case, I was really, really lucky. I didn't have the snap or the quantize on, but I still hit it right on. So let's try to do it where we don't hit it right on and see what happens. I want you to watch for an orange bar over here that's going to come up. And if that orange bar goes up, we know that we didn't hit right on. And we're going to have to try and manipulate these little pitch up, pitch down arrows to try to put the track back in time. Hopefully I can, let me make sure I can get out of sync. Maybe the sync will automatically save me. All right, let's put this to 100 just manually. We can go to this and select fine or micro so I can get it right at 100. If you double click, you get different views for your tracks here. So let's go back and do this one more time. And I will probably not hit this right in time, which is fine. In fact, that's what we want. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we are a little out. And the longer this goes on, the further we're going to end up going out of time because we didn't hit it perfectly. And I can even exaggerate it. Now I can take this actual bar and I can pull it back, or just like on a CDJ, I should have controls that will just momentarily speed up or slow down the playback. So let's get it back in time together. And just like that, we're playing back in time. So I'm going to turn on the sync and the quantize again, and we're just going to do our first ever really basic mix. And this is a really good and handy feature on the EQs, is that if you click this button, you can actually kill that particular frequency range. So we've been listening to the beginning of this track a million times. I'm sure it's getting on your nerves by now. So we'll just listen to that with these tracks and sort of kill these switches. And here it is back in. And out. Kill the mids. So this is all about making room when you have two tracks playing back together. You don't want that many overlapping frequencies at a given time, or it's going to overload, it's going to sound bad. There's just too much energy in a given frequency range, and it doesn't work. So you always want to imagine your two tracks kind of working like puzzle pieces, that they fit, but when you take two puzzle pieces, you can try to stick them together in different ways, but there really is only one way for them to go. I guess with music, there are a lot more variations than just that, but you got to remember that you can't be stacking too much. If you stack too much, it's going to sound bad. So in this example, we're going to do something really basic. This will be our first track playing back, and I'm going to let it get towards near the very end of the track, and then I'm going to pull this track back in from our first cue point, and I might use the EQ. So I'm going to kill the lows until I get to a point where I can bring them in, probably at this 2 mark when the kick is, and we should be good to go. So this is as basic as it gets. We're going to do more complex things inside of Bitwig, but I wanted to show you how this whole basic section works inside of Traktor. I'm not using a controller, so I'm just going to have to use my mouse, but we should be able to still come up with a pretty seamless mix between these two tracks, even without a controller. So I'm going to turn off the loop points, and let's just play back here. So I've got my lows killed here. Maybe I'll turn the mids down a little bit as well. So I can see there's a change coming up here in a second. 2, 3, 4. And I mean, just like that was a very basic way to mix between tracks. That was kind of crappy, though. I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to mix a little bit longer in, not just with those last 8 bars. Maybe I'll do a mix at an earlier point, and we'll kill this track sooner. So again, I didn't do any practice with this, so we'll just see how it goes and play back and just have a little bit of fun here. So let's just go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's definitely not going to win us any awards anytime soon. That was pretty terrible, but it was just to show you how simply you can get 2 tracks playing together, and even if you're making a lot of mistakes like I was doing with the EQs and everything else, it doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to notice too much, especially if they've been drinking and they just are interested in hearing the music and dancing or whatever. So I hope that was helpful to you guys. Again, just showing you how in software form, Native Instruments, with their program Traktor, has attempted to take the DJ setup, our two cdjs and a mixer, and make it easy for us to control exactly from the computer. So in the next few videos, we'll jump into Bitwig Studio and we're going to create our own sort of DJ setup. And we'll begin by trying to emulate something very similar to what we have here, only we're going to make our mix inside and on the arranger timeline. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for watching.